And then I'm going to let everybody in. Oh, and the last thing, probably most of the people in the audience as they're joining are not current Avocademy students, so not foundations and not CJ.
Okay.
I see some names that I know, but most folks. So I might interrupt you all and like explain words that, like if you say CJ or you say something like that, I'll cut in. All right, so hi everybody. We'll do that little awkward icebreaker where you put in the chat where you are calling in from, as we wait for everybody to connect audio and camera. So if everybody can just type where they're located into the chat, and we can kind of get going. Awesome. So today we have these three awesome Avocademy grads. This whole session is really meant to be a question and answer session. So what does that mean? We really need you all to ask questions. I have questions I can ask, but you all's questions are typically much better than the ones I come up with. So I'm going to give you all a couple of minutes to start typing in any questions you have into the chat. What we'll do is we'll go around and do introductions. And for the three speakers today, if you can share your name, what you did before you transitioned careers into UX UI design, and what is your current role / company you work for, if you feel comfortable sharing that. I'll start. So my name is Maka. I am the founder of Avocademy. I was a mechanical engineering before I transitioned into UX UI design, and later started this company where we help people learn UX UI design and then we help them find jobs. Tyler, I'm going to pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tyler. I studied graphic design, but got a job in insurance before Avocademy. And I am a UX UI designer, a junior designer at a company called Snap One. And we sell, or they sell, like smart home gadgets. And I kind of help with that product there. I'm going to pass it to Tanya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tanya. Before transitioning to UX UI design, I was a social worker. So my previous career was a social worker, specifically in child welfare. And I now work at .com Therapy, which is a pediatric teletherapy company. So we provide all of our services via teletherapy. So we provide speech, occupational, and mental health therapy to children and teens. And I am a UX/UI designer with the company. And I apologize if you see me like looking over here. I got to make sure my dog is not barking at people. So if you just see me awkwardly looking over there, that's what I'm doing. And then Daniel.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I went to college for music education. I was a public school band director for 7 years and transitioned to UX design. And now I work at Delta Airlines. And I work as a UX designer, UI designer, but mostly working along with developers. And at least with such a big company, I work specifically with Delta.com related things.
Cool. Daniel, I'm going to have you kick us off with the first question. The first question is, what separates Avocademy from other UX UI bootcamps? And maybe from your perspective, what we can ask you is, why did you choose to go with Avocademy over other bootcamps that maybe you looked at before choosing to go with us?
Yeah, I think a couple of things that really stood out to me is one, that I was able to go at my own pace. Since I was a teacher, and when I decided to actually make the jump, I realized that I was also kind of in a time limit just by how our contracts were. I wanted to finish the school year and this and that. And by then being able to tie it off to getting a job. And so one of the things that I really like is I could go at my own pace. And just me personally, I'm a person that will push and go really, out. I don't like to wait on sometimes on things. And then I just like to go at my own pace. And sometimes my pace is really fast, but that's the pace that I wanted to take. And so that kind of like that I was able to take a little bit faster and get through a lot of this information as quickly as possible, but it's still making sure that I learned all this stuff. I think another thing that I learned eventually being in Avocademy was I really found it helpful, the speaker sessions. I really enjoyed those where you actually have people that were already in the field teaching you about different topics regarding, I remember I went to one about micro interactions, and there are just so many different sessions about things that yes, the bootcamp teaches you, but it goes more into detail about everyday type things that, designers have to actually go through. So I think that's the second thing. And then 3, obviously the mentorship that I was able to get mentorship as needed if there had any questions or didn't understand an assignment, that I was able to reach out to help and get information like that. So I'll send it to Tanya. I'll go backwards.
Yeah, just picking up Daniel, I think he had some really good points as to what differentiates Avocademy from other boot camps. Definitely it being self-paced was a perk. I worked full-time pretty much up until I transitioned to my new job. So I worked full time while doing the program. So it was really nice to be able to do the readings and do the assignments in my own time, whether it's my lunch break or, after work on the weekends. That was nice compared to some other boot camps that I think like General Assembly, if you do the full-time one, it's like basically like work. So you can't work while you're doing it. So that flexibility was really nice. And then also the mentorship, that is something that I really valued when I was in foundations. You have unlimited mentor calls, which, take place via Zoom. So I really valued those. I really took advantage of those. I pretty much did them like every week, and sometimes I would do twice a week. And it was just a really great way to get feedback from a mentor. There's also Slack mentors that you can also chat with, but I'm a person who likes to communicate more like face-to-face or like through voice. So that's something that I really found valuable. And then I think the community is really great in Avocademy. We have Slack channels, and everyone is just honestly so nice and like really friendly and like genuinely wants to help you and is really supportive. And I think we all just want the best for everyone. So even though we're all, located in different states and different areas, different time zones, you can just really feel the support of all the other students in the program.
Honestly, I couldn't agree more with either of you. For me also was price. I was super duper broke working in the job that I was in, and knowing that there were payment options and knowing that it wasn't as expensive as $15,000 as some of the other ones are, which is actually a master's degree. So the price was a big thing on top of the other stuff. I started the Google course and I wasn't a huge fan personally. I think that the content was good, but having the mentorship to fall back on was super important for me. From actually being able to talk to somebody and it not necessarily being peer reviewed, but actually knowing that I'm doing the right thing and moving in the right direction for me.
Thank you. So there's another question that says, is this really hard to learn? Or maybe there's a lot of questions about how hard this is. Let me read the first one. How hard is it to break into UX design without prior experience? So maybe you all can talk about I think for all of you, that was probably a fear at one point or another, how am I going to get a job without experience? And maybe talk about your personal experience in that, getting the real world experience. And maybe let's go back, Tyler.
So going into it, I wasn't as scared because I had graphics experience and we had touched basically the surface of UX and UI. I'm from the Midwest, so it's very packaging design based. We didn't really go super in depth in the digital world. So I wasn't super intimidated by learning the software itself. I thought that I would be able to adapt pretty fast given that I had already learned Adobe stuff. As for learning the other stuff, it is definitely a little overwhelming at first because it is a lot of information. but I feel like it's definitely doable if you do it in chunks, and how the foundations course is laid out. It's kind of good for that. And it kind of does walk you through like the thought process and a lot of the fundamental like things to learn. I thought it was overwhelming. I don't think it was hard to learn though. It is a lot of information, but it's not necessarily hard for me at least. And then, yeah, Tanya.
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that's new is going to be a little bit intimidating and challenging to learn. And I think especially as a career changer, which all three of us are, and which majority of people are who are doing this. I mean, I guess everyone is a career changer, but yeah, so I would agree with Tyler. It's not hard, but overall, I just think, in anything, whatever you put in is what you get out. So, if you put in the time and the effort to really go through the program, do the readings, and really apply yourself, then, I think you will be able to get a lot out of it. I think, like Tyler said, there's so much to learn, and you're not honestly going to be good at everything. Like, I'm not good at every single piece of, UX and UI design. But I think, again, as long as you really apply yourself and really push yourself to learn, then, you can do it. I still have to like YouTube things when I'm at work, like in a meeting. I have my other screen, like Googling, like what verbiage they're talking about. But, I think as long as you have that positive mindset and you really want to do it, and it's something you genuinely enjoy, then, I think it will be worth it. And if you enjoy what you're doing and what you're learning, then you'll be able to pick it up, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree. Any new skill that you're going to learn or have to transfer is going to take time and energy and effort. Like it's not just going to be, nothing is going to be super easy to do. I mean, nothing is. Even I remember even when coming out of college and going into teaching, because my teaching was banned, and there's not as many positions as there are other disciplines. It was also even difficult for me, even though I had a degree, and I knew many friends that had a degree in the same thing and were struggling maybe to find jobs and those things as well. So it's not necessarily so much about I guess how hard it is. I mean, regardless of what career or what path you're choosing, you're going to have to work hard at it. It's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be things you have to learn how to do, software you need to learn how to use. And I'm sure, and you guys' positions as well, there's been software that, that is not necessarily talked about in Foundations of Career Jumpstart, because there's so many software outside just Figma that we use, and we have to learn how to use all of it as well. So it's a constant learning curve. So it's easy, yeah, sure, but you have to be willing to learn all the time, because there's always a new software that we have to use or something else that we have to use. Figma comes out with a new feature that we have to learn how to use. So it's just a constant learning procedure, and you have to be able to want to learn all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, Daniel. And when I was kind of originally creating the curriculum for the course, something that I had on there as like a learning outcome was like how to learn, because softwares are changing all the time, and like there's new tools, and like one company could use Figma, the other one could use Sketch, like, but if you just know how to learn one, like you've learned how to use one, it's the similar process to learn how to use the other one, right? Like there's skills that are applicable. We'll do like a quick fast fire question, and then we'll talk about process. But in your current job, are you remote or in person? If you want to kick us off, Daniel.
I am hybrid for
Can you
Delta.
explain what that means?
I am in the office one week and then remote another week, but our weeks start on Wednesdays. So it's a little bit just because our sprints start on Wednesdays. And so we do 1 week on, 1 week remote.
Cool.
I am remote. So our company was actually fully remote since the inception. So we're like a teletherapy company. So it's actually been fully remote even before COVID. So.
Yeah, I'm also completely remote. They're starting to do hybrid stuff if you live close to like one of the headquarters, but everybody's pretty much remote.
Cool. So There's a question written in many different ways in here, which talks about just timeline, like how long did it take you to do all of this? So I would love for you all to share, like, when did you start foundations? When did you start Career Jumpstart? And then how long it took you to find a job? I'll explain some stuff before we start. So we have two programs. We have a foundations program that typically takes about 8 weeks or 2 months. And that's where you're kind of like learning the basics and, you know, working with mentors and really just like learning the tools. And then we have a Career Jumpstart program. And our Career Jumpstart program, you spend the first 2 months working on real client projects, and then you spend up to 6 months looking for a job. So if you hear folks say foundations and CJ or Career Jumpstart, that's kind of what they're referring to. Tyler, do you want to kick us off on kind of your process?
Sure. I started foundations October of 21, finished it middle of December of 21, I believe. And then I jumped into Career Jumpstart in the middle of January 22, and then got a job in June of this year.
How long were you applying for jobs?
I think either a month and a half or 2 months.
So I started foundations in December, and then I finished, I think, the first week of February. And then I did Career Jumpstart from February. Well, I did like the projects until April. So I started applying, and then it took me almost 2 months to get my position. And I started in July, so it'll be my 1 month on Friday. So.
I started foundations in, I want to say December, like middle of December. And then because I'm a teacher, we have, winter breaks off, or I was a teacher, we had winter breaks off. So I was able to really focus on it, almost on it full time, since I didn't have to go to school at times. But I finished, I think, foundations in the middle of January. So, and then after that, I enrolled into CJ, and then I was in CJ for the 2 months or so. And it took me about a month to find a job. I found my job, I think, in the middle of April, or maybe towards the end of April, but I didn't start until about middle of June.
Yeah, and actually, so we say that it on average takes, 3 to 6 months to find work. I think all of you are on the faster side of things. Because I think I heard you all say like 2 and like a month-ish. On that note, do you all remember how many jobs you applied to and how many interviews you had? Daniel's laughing.
Yeah, because it's funny because I haven't really thought about it now. Because even then, till this day, I still get rejection emails that I applied 2-3 months ago. So I think when I eventually got the job, I think my count was at 300 something, almost 400, I think. So it was a lot of jobs. Because I really wanted to make sure I found a job before school year ended. So I applied aggressively. I got about maybe 6 or 5 interviews. By the time I got the job offer, I declined other interviews after it. And so I think I would say maybe total 5-6 interviews, and then obviously the 1 job offer.
So I applied to exactly 200 because I remember I stopped after that. So I applied to 200, and just to provide some more information, I guess, I don't know, Mako, you could go into a little bit more, but so the program suggests that you apply to 40 a week. And I know 200 sounds like a lot. Like when I speak to a lot of other people, like their eyes are just like, what the heck? It's actually really not that hard. Like when we were first told to do 40 a week, I was literally like, how are there this many jobs? But I applied to like 30 jobs in one day, one time. So there's so many jobs out there. Like if you go on LinkedIn or any other job boards and look up UX designer, junior UX designer, there's so many. So don't be frightened by that number. And also, it's just kind of a numbers game, and it kind of just makes sense, right? Like the more jobs you apply to, theoretically, the higher, the more chances you'll get of getting an interview. So yeah, I applied to 200 and I interviewed with 6 companies. So I think, given the rounds and stuff, like it was probably like 10 interviews. And then I also declined 2 more after I accepted my current position.
Yeah, I think around the same. I think it was anywhere from like 250 to 300 for me. My position alone was 5 interviews. So I think I was in the ballpark of like 12 to 15 with like all of them that I did.
Cool. And I think Tanya's point is a really good point. A lot of people get really scared by that number of applications, but like we have yet to have somebody run out of jobs to apply to, which is really good a sign. There's 2 questions here that I'm going to combine. So I think you all briefly touched on like what you did before you switched careers into UX design. So what's your background before this course? And then the second question is, what transferable skills from your past experience did you highlight when interviewing for UX roles? So if you could just touch on what you were doing before and how you use those skills when interviewing.
Before I was working as an insurance agent, but I had a background in like graphics. I wanted to get into design or back into design. And then what was the other question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, how did you apply that experience? Like, when you're interviewing and you have to talk about something other than like the 3 projects you've done in UX UI design, how did you like relate your past experience to UX UI design?
Gotcha. I have a lot of customer service experience, and so just being able to talk to people in general was a really big point. Also, working in insurance, I did deal with a lot of like frantic or maybe not the most pleasant people. And so being able to talk about de-escalating or being able to kind of like just communicate, like communication is always like the answer to almost all of the questions that they'll ask, but like in situations where it can be tense or people are not agreeing, just being able to have those sort of like de-escalation skills, I definitely have like brought into interviews.
So before this, like I said before, I was a social worker. So I was a clinical social worker working in child welfare. So I, really like sold myself in these interviews, which sounds weird, but like, really like talking about like my skills and my experience. And I actually really wanted to work for a teletherapy company because of my social work experience. So when I was going through this interview process or the interview process with my current company, because they are a pediatric teletherapy company and my background was social work with children, I was really able to talk about how I've utilized my skills of empathy, really understanding others and understanding their problems, trying to help them solve those problems, and how with that experience, I'm shifting that to UX and understanding users and their problems and trying to eliminate their, barriers and things like that. Like Tyler said, communication is extremely important. It kind of really is like the answer to all like the questions and problems that will come up. Really being able to collaborate and be a team player. Like within my role in social work, for example, I worked with like teachers and therapists and attorneys and, all these different providers. So I was able to say how to translate that to UX. I'm able to communicate and, listen to different viewpoints of engineers, project managers, other stakeholders. So there's a lot of different ways that you can transfer your skills, even if you don't think it's relevant. Like my skills and my experience were more beneficial for my position because they're a pediatric teletherapy company, but really, in any job, you're really using communication skills, problem solving, and most of the time you have to be empathetic, especially if you're working with people, you have to be empathetic in any job you do. So there are a lot of transferable skills that I think people just don't really realize just because it's not related to tech or design.
Yeah. So yeah, my job was obviously not anything tech related. I was a band director, high school band director for 7 years. And so, but I found that my skills actually are very transferable. I just need to understand how they see it in the corporate world, right? And not in the educational world where things are so different. But I will say, I know that we had one of that Microsoft Reach program with CJ. And talking to one of those designers, he actually told me that being a teacher, if anything, could be a good thing. And it's something that you should actually highlight as you're interviewing, because you have a different set of skills, dealing with students, parents, other adults, attention to detail, right? Because I've taught kids how to play music and go through it, something that takes a long process. And so there are a lot of skills that I had that maybe other candidates wouldn't have. Even as running a band program, I have to think about budgets. There are meetings with different instructors that we used to have for the band program. So there's a lot of different skills. It's just that it might be called something different in your field of work. And in my field of work, it's obviously definitely very different, but almost every skill I think that I use on a day-to-day basis, I've used at some point in my previous career as well. It's just maybe in a different way.
Yeah, and I think we try and highlight some of that in the Career Jumpstart program when you work on your resume, right? And like you start thinking about, I don't know if you all have been around, but we introduced an activity that's like about me, which seems really simple, but like we have you all like write down your little like elevator speech. And we have a career coach that literally works on like making your past experience, like making your past experience relevant to the jobs you're applying to, right? And we do the same thing with the resume, right? We tell you to pull up like all of the job descriptions and find words that designers use to describe the work you've actually done. You can talk about communication as a teacher, you can talk about empathy, like all of the things you all touched on, like Tyler, right? De-escalating difficult situations. All of those things are easily transferable. So that's great. I am going to, we still have some time. I'm going to answer a question here. So once we complete the foundations course, do we automatically qualify for Career Jumpstart, or do we go through some type of performance review to advance? Once you finish foundations, there's an application now for the Career Jumpstart program. On the application process, we review your portfolio that you've created in foundations. And there's a small design challenge that we ask you to like do a little thing in Figma and record yourself talking through your experience doing it. We also look at the mentor feedback that was been provided throughout the course, right? And how well you took their feedback in the course. We used to accept everybody straight through. And now we're trying to, we have really good placement rates in Career Jumpstart. So 95 of our students find jobs within 6 months. And we want to continue to help those people that are putting in, I think Tanya said earlier, like you get what you put into the course. So we're really trying to find people that are willing to like go out of their way to learn things and like have those right skills. So if you complete foundations, there's a very high chance you will get into Career Jumpstart if you apply yourself and kind of, complete those steps, but it's not automatic. Yeah. There were some questions about payment that I answered through text, background. Okay. Can you all share like your degrees or any educational qualifications? And I'll also just share, the question here is a degree really important for finding a job in UX UI? I think all of you have degrees, if I'm correct, but we've had tons of students actually in other speaker series that do not have students, right? Like I think it was the last speaker series, double dropouts from high school and college. So it's, unless you're applying to a really like old school company that has that requirement, it's not a must, right? I think UX UI is like a really forgiving field because it's a lot of career changers. But Daniel, do you want to kick us off with like what degrees you have?
Yeah, I only have one degree and just bachelor's of music education. And other than that, any other, just from Avocademy was the only other thing that I've education, I guess, quote unquote, that I've had.
So I have a bachelor's. I have a bachelor's in family science, and then I also have a master's in social work. And in terms of it being really important, like Maka said, I really don't think people care if you have a degree or not. That's not something that they ask. And I don't believe out of any of the 200 applications that I did any of them write anything about education. I think for my position specifically, I don't think they care that I have a degree in social work, but I think that my experience in social work was helpful, because in my company, they really pride themselves in having like clinical people in their leadership team. I think like half the leadership team, so like the chief blank officers used to be providers. But I don't think the fact that I had a master's degree in social work, pushed them to hire me. So.
And I have an associate's degree in graphics. So I don't have like a bachelor's or a master's or anything. One thing I will say, when it comes to like any sort of like art field or artistic field, it's really about like what you can show them, and being able to explain like what you did, specifically in UX, being able to explain the why you did everything. But like from a visual standpoint, just like being able to show them like, this is what I have to bring to you. Like it kind of is your degree almost when you're starting to apply. Like you are showing them, this is what I'm capable of. This is where I'm going. I want to continue to keep learning. Like that's kind of the way I took it, at least.
Yeah, Tyler, that was actually what I was going to touch on. And I think it's what the last question that came in is, your portfolio is really like the most important thing, right? And like both of our programs are 100% tailored to like helping you finish your portfolio. Then we help you do your resume and then you start applying, right? And you kind of just have to like trust the process, because like once you start applying, like you have all the assets you need. In your portfolio, you show like what you can do, and you show like your communication skills, which is what Tyler touched on, right? It's like, how do you explain the work you've done? And that is, so like, let's say you went to, I don't know, Cornell for a master's in UX design and like have one portfolio piece in your portfolio, or you don't have a college degree and have like 6 pieces in your portfolio that are amazing and high quality, like that master's degree is not going to win over a really great portfolio. Sure, will it maybe get you more interviews? Maybe, but it's not ultimately going to win over a good portfolio. Let's see. Do you need a background in drawing or illustration to do UX design? Not at all. And I think, this 2 out of 3 can show there was no artistic background in terms of like drawing or illustration before that. And then there's a question here about like time management. So how did you manage doing the courses while dealing with your daytime job? Was it hard? Was it easy? Daniel, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah. So again, I had a full-time job mostly while doing the foundations. I will say I did take advantage of like the Christmas break time, right when the schools are changing. So I did take advantage of that and being able to get a lot of foundation work done then. But once I was in CJ, and there was still work to be done, I just basically did it. I just knew that once I finished school and I came home, kind of what I did was all CJ related stuff. And almost most of the weekends I would do CJ related stuff as well. So I just make sure that I separated the two, but I still did both of them. So it is a little bit of extra work that you have to put in while you're a full-time, have a full-time job and you're learning all these skills and having to come up with the designs and everything and meet with your team. But it's definitely doable. And the good thing is, again, it's not like it's a whole year that you're doing 2 jobs. It's just that amount of time, either for foundations or CJ. But just make sure that I dedicated the time, like weekends was dedicated for CJ stuff. And after work, when I came home, after eating and all those things, I made sure that that's what I did in my off time.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I worked full time throughout the entire process, foundations and career jumpstart, until I started my new job. And I worked in child welfare. So as I'm sure you all know, it's a very high stress environment. But I made it work. I would do the readings during like my lunchtime, and thankfully I was able to actually work remote. So I was able to really squeeze some time in, but just do the readings during my lunch break. But pretty much like every day after work, I just kind of dedicated again, like after dinner, just spending the rest of the night doing the readings, doing the activities, using my weekends to do it. I think it's definitely doable, and I feel like it kind of just all goes back to what I said is you get out what you put in. So, I feel like I dedicated a lot of my evenings and weekends towards it, to get through the course and to make sure that I was really, learning and grasping everything. So it's definitely doable.
So during foundations, I worked full time, and I'll say it's a lot. It's doable, but it is overwhelming. Definitely, like, time management is really important. Like, pace yourself, and just give yourself enough time to actually like be a person outside of it as well. Career Jumpstart, I went part-time because I made the decision to do more than one project at once, which you don't have to do, but it became a little bit too much for me, so I ended up going part-time at the job because I was able to do that. And then, yeah, by the end of it, I kind of quit my job because I just didn't like it a lot, and I don't advise doing that. But I did end up quitting my job to like go full force into applying. But it's definitely doable, but it is overwhelming. So just give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah, I think we have a good mix of people doing it full time, like working full time while doing the course, and then people that are either working part time or like gig workers that are doing the course, as well as people that are not currently employed. I would definitely say we really don't recommend you quit your job, because then the stress on finding a job becomes like that much more, right? Like, you don't want your livelihood to depend on like you finding a job, because then it becomes so much more stressful. Finding a job in this field can take time, right? Like, we've seen like the best of the best students, it take them 4 months to find a job, and then somebody that maybe skill wise wasn't right up to that level find a job in 2 weeks, right? So like, we have a lot of analytics that we put into place into the advice we give our students on how to find a job, but the market behaves differently, and sometimes it takes a little longer. So when you quit your job and you have like this much money left in your bank account to make it this many months, like, it's just an extra amount of stress that nobody needs as they're trying to change careers, which is already stressful. Let's see. So there was a question here about helping with your resume and Career Jumpstart. So we definitely do. In Career Jumpstart, you spend the first 2 months doing real client projects. So you do 1 month long projects with other team members. Once you're done with that, you finish up your portfolio, you finish up your resume, which we help you with. We help you with interview techniques. We have unlimited mock interview practice. And then we have a application tracking tool that we give you so you can track your applications. As we're kind of reviewing, if your applications are not converting at the rate we want them to, we kind of make you schedule more mock interviews, and we help you prep in a way that like you need. So we really customize the help to like each person. I think the 3 of you had like really good like social skills and like presentation skills. So not a lot of, I don't think we like forced you all to do a lot of mock interviews and things like that. But we do have other students where like, once we're done teaching design and they have a full portfolio, we now also have to teach basic interview skills, like a little bit more of like the awkward, conversation you have when you get on an interview and say hi, ask them how they're doing, talk about the weather. It's safe to talk about the weather, type of teaching as well. But yeah, there was a question here about how did you all network in the UX field, and did that help in finding a job? I think we're at Tyler. Yeah.
I would say I networked a lot on LinkedIn, just like anybody who had either Avocademy or UX in their title at all, I just connected with. Otherwise, the Microsoft mentoring program helped like a lot. Like, as soon as I started I started to connect with them on LinkedIn. I just started to get a whole bunch of people, because when somebody is from Microsoft, that's kind of a big name, and so you definitely pop up in there like recommended. Otherwise, Avocademy in general just has like a really great community aspect to it, where everybody's super supportive and it's like wants you to win. And so there are different channels in there too that you can kind of like past people that have been in it have been like, okay, well, our company's hiring, like, everybody, like, what's your name? I want to like refer you, like that kind of a thing. So that's pretty much what I did. I did LinkedIn and just like relied on the Avocademy community.
Yeah, so I did a lot of networking as well. I went on LinkedIn and I actually found social workers turn UX designers, and I feel like that was extremely helpful. One, just to really, you know, hear their story and hear how they made the transition from being a social worker to where they are now. And I was actually able to speak to a social worker turned UX designer who worked at Amazon, and now he's at Indeed. And he's super nice. Like, he's just so friendly, like out of, like, I just, you send these invitations and, or these like connection requests and you don't know if they're going to respond, but I'm really thankful for him because he, really gave me his time to, explain to me how he made that transition successfully. And then how, he worked, when he was at Amazon and now he's at Indeed. So I highly suggest, you doing that. I think, again, it was also kind of like a confidence boost to know that there were other people who came from my exact, I didn't talk to anyone who came from child welfare, but who came from social work to UX design, just to see like it is possible. And I also, when I was applying, I didn't really do this until the end, or actually I did this for the companies I was more interested in. But a word of advice that I have is, after I applied to a job, I would go on LinkedIn and find designers who worked at that company and message them, or, connection requested them. And I said, hi, I'm a UX designer. I see you work at X company. I would love to, have the opportunity to chat with you about the design work there. Like, I guess I would say, like, if out of like 6 people I sent connection requests to, I probably heard back from like half of them. But it can be really beneficial. One of the designers I spoke to actually volunteered to push my portfolio through, and then 30 minutes later I got an email from the HR people, and I got like interview set up. I actually ended up declining a second round interview for that company because I took my the offer for my company. But even doing that, like, you don't know what can come out of that. I think you have to go into it expecting to get ghosted because a lot of people, just are busy and, might not respond to you. But, you could fall into the opportunity that I did, where the designer volunteered to push my portfolio through. So.
Yeah, I think networking, I think, also comes naturally just from the CJ course, because you get to be with all these other people that eventually maybe get a job before you. Or maybe you were in a group together already, and then so because they were further along the process, they made a job, and so sometimes you're able to contact them, see about kind of maybe some interview things that they learned along the way. Same thing, LinkedIn. I didn't use LinkedIn until 6 months ago. I had one that I set up when I graduated college because that's what I was told to do, and then I never opened it again. So LinkedIn is a big thing. It wasn't in my previous field of work, so that's why I didn't have any interest in it. But I see how it's super beneficial now, just with connecting with other UX designers, previous, Avocademy people. The other day, there was an Avocademy grad, well, actually one of my mentors, and then they were posting about a job that they had, available, and then I knew somebody that was looking for a job, so I kind of referred them to them. He's like, hey, they're hiring, and I know them because, Avocademy and this and that. So within Avocademy, you also kind of make your own network. And even for me now, trying to refer somebody, right, I reach out to Maka, and I'm sure she also is able to reach out to other students as well. So I think just within itself, it creates a network, which is good. And obviously just LinkedIn, just messaging people and people that have had previous experiences, either at the company that you're looking for or trying to work at, or just that come from the same field that made the transition. Because I'm 99% sure that most likely you're not the first person that's transitioned from your job to UX design. Someone else has to have done it before. And so finding someone that you can talk to and learn from is really helpful as well.
Yeah, I think you all touched on like some awesome points. I'll do a quick summary. I think the CJ community is amazing, and I am amazed by how you all just like keep making connections within the community, even when we don't organize the events. We have a daily CJ call that, I think most of you are actually on consistently. And folks are like on there offering to do mock interviews with each other, and there's like little groups of people that I see like making jokes on the call together that I know they're probably DMing or in some subgroups together. So I think that's great. Everybody's super willing to help each other. Like Daniel said, when companies are hiring, you all come to me like, hey, we're hiring for this role, and we're able to refer more grads to those roles. We have a network of CJ grads in a separate group where now we just started doing like every other week calls on like after like job talks, right? Like things that come up when you start the job. And I think we also have, we have our amazing mentor staff at Avocademy, but we've started partnering with different groups. Like I think some of you mentioned the Microsoft program. There's a Dell program we partnered with that allows you all as students to like talk to employees at these companies and like ask them the question, the burning questions you all have. So yeah, I think you all touched on everything there. I know we're getting close to time, so I'm actually, the last question that was just asked on here is what I want you all to answer, which is looking back, would you have done anything differently? Slash like, what's your one piece of advice to folks that are on this call that are potentially thinking about a career change? And maybe that's it. What would you have told yourself 8 months from now? Or I guess it was way less, right? It was December for most of you. So less than 8 months ago, what would have helped you kind of like, make this decision? I know it's like a little bit of a hard question. So Tanya, if you want to start.
I want to say, don't think there's anything I would have done differently. I think overall, I would have done things sooner. But it didn't take me that long in my transition of wanting to have a career change to starting Avocademy. Like I think I started thinking about it in October. I actually did a lot of research like within different like boot camps. Like I looked up some other ones, spoke to some current friends who are UX designers that made the transition, and then by December I started Avocademy. So I think that's the only thing I would have really done differently is like started earlier. But I think it kind of all worked out. And I think my piece of advice would really be to like just do it. That made me think of Nike, but like really, yeah, like just kind of, if you, especially, I think you should do your research. It is a big commitment to change your career. And just because you go through, if you go through foundations and stuff, you don't have to like change your career. Maybe you're going to realize it's not for you. But I think, to save yourself the time and the money, do your research into the field and see if it's something that you really want to do. And if you feel like you do, like, you should just go for it. I can't speak for other people, but I feel like a majority of people don't regret, making this change, going through this program. I just am really happy with where I am right now. Like I was talking to some friends and I feel like, honestly, for the first time, I can say I love my job. I went through school in the past like 5-ish years as a social worker. And I'm really passionate about helping people. And that's what I wanted to do. So it was really scary at first to think that, I'm throwing away the past, however many years of my life of college and post-college and the past 5 years of my career to transition to something different. But again, I honestly feel like I've never been happier in a career. And this is the first time I can say I actually love what I do. Because honestly, I liked being a social worker, but I really didn't love it. So I would really just say, if you're thinking about it and you feel like this is something that you want to do, you should go for it. I guess I'll bring it to Tyler.
Okay, so it's going to be loaded a little bit, but Mako will probably smile when I say this. But don't allow self-doubt to just like shut you down. Before and even during and now even a month and a half into a new position, like imposter syndrome is a huge thing that I deal with, and it hits me like an actual truck. And just don't let the self-doubt of like, oh, I can't do this, like stop you in your tracks. be realistic with yourself. If you need to like journal, if you need to like talk to somebody, just be realistic with yourself and your expectations moving forward. That's probably my biggest advice, because imposter syndrome can be really isolating and it can feel you can't do it, but you definitely can. Just give yourself some grace. I'd say that Mako will laugh because of the amount of like anxious DMs that she's gotten like this past like 9 months is really funny. But yeah, that's basically the advice that I'd give on like a mental level of just like give yourself some grace, be realistic with yourself. Don't allow self-doubt to completely control you.
I obviously agree with Tyler too. I think, and like I was explaining earlier, at least for me, this personally, it was my personal choice. Obviously you probably should make a better choice, but I really I jumped straight into foundations and career jumpstarts, and I try to almost work, like every single day, every single hours that I was awake in something, either for CJ or for career jumpstart. And it's not that that's what we were being told. I chose that because I knew I could handle it. But looking back, like Tyler said, give yourself some time to, be yourself, some free time to not worry about doing something that you're doing or something has to get done. So just giving yourself more grace, like you said. I think I definitely pushed myself hard, and I'm not saying I regret it, but I wish I wouldn't have maybe to take a little bit more time so that that I could have been a little more relaxed in the process. But that was just my choice. I knew I could handle it, but that just kind of a decision I made in that moment, because I was so afraid, again, and kind of what it goes back to, I was so afraid of like, maybe what if I don't get a job within this time frame that I want to, and I have so much self-doubt that, because I was like, I'm a teacher, like knowing the world, I'm not even in the corporate world, like I've never had really a job outside really teaching, and it's just so different that I thought I had a lot of self-doubt for me, and so that's why I kind of went really hard on myself. But that's just kind of what my way of doing things sometimes. But yeah, I think just have confidence in yourself that you can do it, and just give yourself more grace, and then have a support system, I think. And then if everyone is different, because it is a not difficult time, but you're going to put some extra work that you're not used to in everyday type things, and with your family, significant other, whoever. I think having a good support system that, hey, I'm going to go through this process of going through this course and also working full time, and just know that for you to be there when when things are rough and tough, and I'd have a lot of things to get done, and so I might not have a lot of time to help around the house and this and that. So just having a good support system to help you through, especially if you're doing like a job and the courses, like most people probably will, but just make sure you're good mentally as well there while going through the course.
Yeah, thank you all. I think that's amazing advice. You all touched on something different. And also congrats to you all. I think you all had like started at the same time, and it's been less than 8 months, right? From start to finish, you all are in your new jobs. I think there's like 3x, if not 2x, what you all were making before now. And to just think that like 8 months is like what it took for this like full transformation. And to see it 3 different times in 3 very different like processes. I think like Daniel was super intense and like go, 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 go. I think at some point you were like, I need my activities approved faster, like he was just like on it. Tanya, I remember like we got on the phone and you were like, can I ask this many questions? Can I be on these many, these many mentor sessions? And then Tyler was always in my DMs, like being like, I don't know if I can do this. And I was like, you got this, just keep going. So I think 3 very different stories that ended up at like just a really great place. So thank you all for honestly putting in the work. I hope it was worth it for all of you. And thank you all for joining us today and answering all these questions. Yeah. And thank you for everybody that joined live. I think Sadi shared a coupon code for those of you that are live. If you want to pull that before we end the call in 30 seconds. But thank you all. Bye.